Hi everybody, what's up YouTube? I'm Elias from Talk and Talk English channel. In this video, we're gonna learn English by using movie technique. Probably it's a new way for you to learn English, but I wanna convince you that this is super powerful one. I took a video from the channel named Oversimplified. It's a great channel with great videos. Mostly about history. It's not only an interesting video about the history of England and the English language, but it's also a super powerful tool for you to learn the new vocabulary, new grammar, idioms and slang. So, how does it work? This video contains fast and casual English that can be hard to understand for most learners unless you are very advanced. I'm gonna show you a section, then pause it, and then I will retell you this section by using easier and slower English. I'll explain difficult vocabulary, so it's gonna be much easier for you to understand it. Do you know that English language has kind of a double vocabulary system? It can be two or more different words with the same meaning. Even though they mean the same, they still have different feelings. For example, one word may be more informal and kinda casual, when the second one may be more formal and intellectual. Interesting, right? For example, to buy and to purchase. They basically mean the same, but to buy is a little bit more casual way to talk about this, when to purchase is more intellectual way to pronounce it. I noticed it before, but I couldn't understand why it was this way. I was curious about this, and finally, I found an answer. In fact, there was a war that changed the English language. In this video, we're gonna learn some history about England and this war. And beyond it, we're gonna learn a lot of English. Okay, now we're moving on to the video that is titled as The War that Changed the English Language. Here we go!
England in the Middle Ages.
England in the Middle Ages. The Middle Age is an old time period of our history. In this video, the author is going to describe mostly from the 9th to the 11th century of the Middle Age.
The sun is shining, the birds are singing, the children are playing in the village square. What a wonderful time to be alive! Hey, you're dying of dysentery.
In this video, the author makes these simple dialogues because he wants us to understand what's happening. Here the author just introduces the Middle Age. I think he wants to show us the problems of the Middle Age in this introduction. Dysentery is an infection disease caused by bacteria. It affects your large bowel and damages it. It used to be the serious disease in the Middle Ages. A lot of people died because of it. There were no antibiotics, that's why doctors couldn't cure it. Next, we are going to go through a lot of simple dialogues between key characters.
And also we're being raided by Vikings.
We were being raided by Vikings. We were being raided by Vikings means we were being attacked by Vikings. We can say it as Vikings attacked us.
What an awful time to be alive. It's the year 900. Europe is a Viking's wet dream. Raids galore.
Europe is a Viking's wet dream. Means Europe is a Viking's erotic dream. A wet dream is a slang phrase. It usually describes the sexual dreams of teenagers boys. The author is just kinda joking about Vikings. Raids galore. Galore is an adjective. It means huge. Vikings attack Europe a lot. There are huge battles. The Vikings' raids are galore, meaning huge.
Hey, you want to go raid Paris? Okay.
Here one Viking says to another, "Hey, you wanna go raid Paris?" It means, "Hello, do you want to raid, to attack Paris?" Another Viking replies, "Okay." The Vikings decided to attack France. It's not a perfect grammar in this dialogue, but people usually talk like this. For example, people might say, "Hey, you wanna eat?" Not, "Hello, do you want to eat?" It shows how people talk real English, not a school one.
That particular raid didn't go too well, but the king of the Franks said, "You guys are pretty tough and scary. How about we give you land in northern France, and in return, you protect us from other Vikings?" And it was agreed.
Vikings attacked Paris. They didn't win the war, but the king of France decided to give the land to Vikings in northern France. Of course, the author just makes the situation look funny. In this dialogue, the king says, "You guys are pretty tough and scary. How about we give you land in northern France and in return you protect us from the other Vikings?" Tough means strong, and the phrase in return means in exchange. Usually when people do something for somebody, they expect to get something in return. The king gives the land to the Vikings, and in return, these Vikings must protect France from the other Vikings. It was agreed means they made a deal. The king and Vikings agreed to work together.
The Vikings set up the Duchy of Normandy, and then they went full-on French, converting to Christianity, learning the language, and making babies with the locals.
The Vikings set up the Duchy of Normandy means the Vikings made the Duchy of Normandy. The king gives the land to Vikings, and later they set up the Duchy of Normandy. Normandy is the name of the region in northern France, and the duchy is just an old monarchical style of calling lands. For example, if there is a king, he has a kingdom. If there is an earl, he has an earldom. If there is a duke, he has a duchy. They went full-on French means they became completely, absolutely French, converting to Christianity. The verb to convert means to change, usually about religion. So Vikings converted to Christianity, learned the French language, and made babies with the local French people. These Vikings mixed up with the local French people and became completely French. They went full-on French.
England also had its fair share of Viking problems.
England had its fair share of Viking problems means England also had many of Viking problems. England also had a lot of problems with Vikings, so they had its fair share of Viking problems.
In the 800s, Danish Vikings had conquered most of the country, but the Anglo-Saxons eventually managed to kick them out, although they left behind a bunch of Viking settlers.
Danish Vikings had conquered most of England. The verb to conquer means to get the country and control it by winning the war. Danish Vikings fought with English Anglo-Saxons, and they won a lot of battles. Therefore, they had conquered most of the country. But then Anglo-Saxons eventually managed to kick them out. Anglo-Saxons managed to kick them out means they succeeded to expel them from England. Well, the Vikings had conquered most of the country, but then Anglo-Saxons fought back and they managed to keep them out of England. Although they left behind a bunch of Viking settlers. A settler means a person who arrives, especially from another country, in a new place in order to live there and use the land. Basically, it means a migrant. So, Vikings left the country, but a lot of Viking settlers, migrants, still stayed in the country.
Now this guy's king. He sucks. Replace him with his brother. And he was like, "Hey baby, how you doing?" and had a son, and then turned around and was like, "Hey baby, how you doing?" and had another son. And then he died and no one was sure which son to make king. This one, because he's older. Not if I have anything to do with it. That works for us too.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about this section. It's gonna be tough, but I'll try to explain what's going on. There was a king, Edwig. Edwig had some problems with nobles, the elite high title people of England. And these nobles replaced him with his brother, Edgar the Peaceful. Edgar the Peaceful had relationships with two different women, and he had a son from each of them. So, Edgar had two sons, Edward and Ethelred. And when Edgar the Peaceful died, his son Edward was chosen to be the next king because he was older than Ethelred. But then Ethelred's mother killed Edward, and then Ethelred had become a new king.
Then he grew up and married the Duke of Normandy's daughter and had a bunch of kids. Remember this one. He's important.
The king Ethelred grew up means he became an adult. He was a child, but then he grew up and now he is an adult. Then he married the Duke of Normandy's daughter. A duke is a medieval title, like a king or an earl. They had a bunch of kids. A bunch usually means 3 or more. In this case, Ethelred had 3 kids. He had 2 sons, Edward and Alfred, and a daughter named Gotha. Edward is going to be an important one, as we will see later.
Then his advisors came to him and said, "Hey man, all those Viking settlers that are living here, they might band together and kill you. Well then, why don't we kill them first?" And so it was.
An advisor is a person who gives you advices. So, the king's advisor says, the Viking settlers might band together and kill you. Band together means organize together or meet together. Remember, when the Vikings were kicked out from England, they left many settlers, migrants, there. Now King Ethelred is afraid that these Viking migrants band together and start a revolution in England. So he decides to murder them, to kill them in advance.
This pissed off the Danish king, who launched an invasion, and the Vikings conquered England once again.
This pissed off the Danish king means it makes angry the Danish king. The King Ethelred murdered Viking settlers in England, and this pisses off the Danish king, who is the king of Vikings. Now Danish king started an invasion. An invasion basically means a war, but it has an idea that forces the military get into the country and start fighting. Danish Vikings invaded England, they went into the country, and then they conquered England once again.
Then the Anglo-Saxons unconquered it, then the Vikings reconquered it. The king's family had to go into exile, including Edward. Remember him? He went to Normandy where he lived for 30 years.
The Anglo-Saxons and Vikings came back and forth, and finally the Vikings won. Because now Danish Vikings control England, the king's family had to go into exile. To go into exile means to run away from a country. The king's family, including Edward, ran away from England to Normandy, and they lived there for 30 years.
He and his brother Alfred tried to return to England to retake the throne from the Vikings, but they were betrayed by the Earl of Wessex, who said, "Hey friend, I'll take you to London where all the nobles are waiting to make you king. Oh no, look out, red hot poker in the eyes. I can't see, and thus you can't be king."
Edward lived in Normandy, and then he decided to get back to retake his throne from Vikings to his brother Alfred. Remember, Vikings now control England. When the Vikings king of England died, Edward decided to go with Alfred in England and try to retake the throne to his brother. Edward and his brother believed that the England earl named Godwin was going to help them to retake their throne. But they were betrayed by him. To betray means to disappoint somebody, but it has an idea that you betrayed somebody who believes you. For example, you can betray your girlfriend if you start to date somebody else secretly. She believes you, and then if she discovers that you date secretly somebody else, she's gonna be disappointed, because you betrayed her. The Earl of Wessex Godwin didn't want Alfred to be the next king. He wanted Vikings to keep ruling England. Therefore, he secretly captured Alfred and tortured him. They hurt Alfred and damaged his eyes. Later, he died.
Edward then escaped back to Normandy. After a few more Viking kings came and went, one finally died without an heir, and Edward was called back to England where he became king. And that's where our story begins.
Edward escaped back, came back to Normandy. Viking kings changed one by one, and one finally died without an heir. An heir is a son of the king who should be the next king of country. So, the last Viking king of England died without an heir, and Edward was called back to England, where he became the new king. Okay, that's it for the first section. I encourage you to go back and watch this section again if necessary, because I suppose you have not learned all of the new vocabulary. One time is not enough. Hope you enjoyed it. See you in the next section.